The seating arrangement is proper. The foods are arranged. The 24-hour period of preparation has concluded. Now the high day and extra Sabbath begins. We now can celebrate the Passover meal. There is a lovely handbook called the Haggada that has certain traditional instructions on what to do. I've got one here. I love it because it's made for children and it keeps their attention with the little pop-up figures. The Haggada is what tells you what to do and to read. It tells us what the rabbis have said about the traditions over the years. Now, there's a part that's not written in the Haggada because it's already been written in the scriptures. A super kosher and very traditional Seder would include many readings from the Bible, from the Torah, the first 5 books. A super kosher and very traditional Seder would include many readings in the Torah, the Bible, the first 5 books: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, plus selected readings from other Bible prophets, and ending the Passover with readings in Isaiah. Wow, this could take about 5 or 6 hours. However, I promise we're going to make it a little shorter. We'll use the Haggada as a guideline and touch on the traditions that more specifically relate to the scriptures. After the preparation, the first thing that's done at Passover meal is that the father or patriarch of the family would call his family together. You might know that for Jews, eating is a religious experience around a 4-cornered table. For observant Jews who do not have a temple anymore, the altar does not exist, so the table represents the 4-cornered altar. The temple altar was used anciently to prepare offerings for consumption. The only thing observant Jews talk about during dinner are the scriptures, the Torah. So, to begin with clean hands and a pure heart, they would wash and then pray before the meal, as well as wash and pray after the meal. There's a closing or thank you prayer after each meal. One other thing that is very significant is to have a head covering, a kippah. These little caps, any kind of head covering is appropriate. They remind us of our subservience to God. Now, Jewish men and observant women cover their heads when they pray. Since eating is a religious experience, they cover their heads. Some keep their heads covered all the time, so they can pray anytime. Tonight, the master of the house or bishop, if you're doing this in your congregation, would lead out with the washing. And then we all follow your example. So everyone, imagine, go ahead and wash your hands. One other very brief explanation. Observant Jews will wear a religious garment. It's called a Tallit. This garment is representative of what used to be worn in the temple a long time ago. It's called a Tallit. The reason it's called a Tallit because it's made out of lamb's wool. A lamb is a taleh, and a female lamb is called Talitha. Now, here's how you can remember that. We've already mentioned some of the Lord's names. He has more than 100 names, and they all have significant meaning. We've talked about the bread of life, about the new wine, and now we're talking about the Lamb of God. 2,000 years ago, Jesus went to Capernaum, where the leader of the community fell at his feet and said, "My little daughter is lying at the point of death. would you come and lay hands on her? And as he went to his home, he met crowds already mourning because she had died. He sent them all away, took the little girl by the hand and said, Talitha, cumi. And straightway she arose and walked. She was of the age of 12. It seems that she had curly hair, and Jesus it seems that she had curly hair, as Jesus affectionately called her Talitha, little lamb. And the word cumi is just simply get up for a little girl. Now this garment is called a tallit, as I mentioned, because it represents the Lamb of God. By the way, religious men will put the tallit as they pray over one shoulder like this, and then over the other shoulder, and of course say certain words. Now remember, there are certain markings. There are 4 markings on the corners. You see the long sets of strings and these little knots. If you were to count all the strings and all the knots on these 4 corners, they sum up to 613. That's how many commandments the Jews are bound to keep. Oh, you thought there were only 10? Years ago, Brother Marvin Goldstein and I were doing a fireside together. We heard some of his music earlier, and we'll hear some more later. He's a wonderful friend and another Jewish member of the church. Marvin got up from the piano and said, Brother Rona, you have to tell them the real reason for the 613. I said, well, there are 365 don'ts and 248 do's. Around 270 of those cannot be kept because the Jews don't have the temple. We have bound the commandments to us. Oh, he said, I thought the reason was that we found out the commandments were free, so we took as many as we could get. The binding of Jewish wedding vows is done under 2 talits, or talitot in Hebrew. Even at burial, bodies are washed, completely immersed, clothed, and then buried, wrapped in the garment they were married in. However, the strings are cut off. You're dead. You don't need to be reminded to keep the commandments. Interestingly enough, in life, observant Jews want to wear this garment all the time, and that might be impractical day to day. So over the years, they have fashioned another smaller garment Interestingly enough, in life, observant Jews want to wear the garment all the time, and that might be impractical day to day. So over the years, they have fashioned another smaller garment, which they wear discreetly underneath their clothing. It has an opening to slip over their heads, and they put their regular clothing over it. Those that are religious want to show how religious they are and remind themselves to keep the commandments, so they wear the strings out of their trousers so everyone can see. Now, every tallit must be hand-bound like this with the little knots and the strings. 613. Wearing this wool garment underneath your clothing would be a little uncomfortable. So if you look carefully here, you can see one is cotton, the other is blend. In Israel, I found out that most of the Jews prefer the mesh. Brothers and sisters, I'm describing someone else's religion. that used to be true. And these are customs that have carried on to this day. What you're seeing are echoes of the ancient true religion. They come from ancient temple rites that have died. We declare they have been restored. Are they going to die again? No, perhaps that's one of the reasons it's called the New and Everlasting Covenant. You see, the symbols anciently looked forward to the deliverer, and now we do things in remembrance of him delivering us. The Seder is quite decorative. This is a holy night. This is the family home evening of the year. As a Latter-day Saint, you might look at it as a dramatized sacrament meeting. Make a mental note, if you will, that our Jewish brothers and sisters administer the wine before the bread every Sabbath, with one exception, and that is at Passover. Only once at the Seder is bread and then wine issued.